Brian here. In 2011, Pat and I were on holiday in America, and we spent the last 2 weeks in San Francisco. In the evenings we used to hang out at a little bar called Cece's, which was interesting for several reasons. One, Cece herself had been Miss Peru when she was young, still a bloody handsome maid. Another thing that was interesting was that despite being 5,800 miles from England, they sold bottled Bass. A lot of the young locals in there mistook me for Leon Russell, and at the time I had long white hair and a long white beard, and I did look a bit like him. But the most interesting thing was a guy called Dave. When Dave found out that we came from Plymouth, he asked me if I'd ever been to the Van Dyke. Been to the Van Dyke? I used to bloody live there. He was really excited because he'd never met anyone that had actually been to the Van Dyke, and he was an avid collector of Van Dyke memorabilia. He had old posters, old photographs, articles, you name it. He had all this stuff about the Van Dyke Club. Don't know how he ever even knew about it. It brought back a lot of memories of Plymouth and what it was like. The Van Dyke Club only ran for a few years. It was the late 60s and the early 70s. The club was started by Peter Van Dyke and later helped by his son Greg. Peter was a musician, but he'd also been something in the music industry, a promoter or something, and he had lots of contacts in the music industry. So we started this music venue, and he got lots of famous and almost famous bands to play there. Every Friday and Saturday you could go down there and see top line acts. It really put Plymouth on the market musically, because before that nobody was anybody ever came here. The Van Dyke was on the corner of Exmouth Road and Portland Road in Stoke, and on the other corner it was on the north-east corner of Devonport Park. Before we went to the Van Dyke in the evenings, we used to gather at a pub called the Waterloo in Waterloo Street, Stoke, and we used to gather up there, and they had a nice beer garden in the summer. You could sit out in the beer garden and have a beer and smoke a few funny fags and chill out with your friends. Sadly, if you go to that pub now, the beer garden's gone. They've concreted over it. It's a monstrosity now. They've also moved everything inside. They've knocked all the walls down. They've moved the bar to a different place, so it doesn't have any of the ambience that it had back in the day that we used it. We were a pretty colourful bunch. Long hair was de rigueur for men. We all wore tie-dyed shirts, colourful loons, caftans, red British Army jackets. The women all smelt of patchouli oil, and we used to stay down there for quite some time, because if you went down to the Van Dyke early, you had to queue outside on the pavement. On the other corner was a police station, and if you queued up there, the police would come out and harass you. They'd say you were causing an obstruction and all kinds of stuff. They didn't like long-haired men in them days. They certainly didn't like hippies. We'd get a bloody life somewhere else in it. They actually, one of them threatened to arrest me because I was wearing a red British Army jacket, and he said it was illegal because it had regimental badges on it. Go and find some criminal to harass and leave me alone. But they were the days. When you actually went into the Van Dyke to see a band, I mean, nowadays bands turn up 5 minutes before they're due on stage. They're gone as soon as they finish playing, and usually big venues, you're a long way away from them anyway. Back at the Van Dyke, they turn up early. You could talk to them before the gig, you could talk to them after the gig, and it was up close and personal, so it was a lot more fun. Unfortunately, things move on. There got to be a lot more money in the industry. Van Dyke couldn't afford to pay a lot of money because it was only a small venue, and the band started wanting to get paid more, so they started putting gigs on at the Plymouth Guildhall instead, which was sad really, because you didn't get the up close and personal bit at Plymouth Guildhall. The atmosphere was totally different, so we lost a lot. After before the Van Dyke closed down, there was a big drug raid, I remember. Fortunately I was in London at the time, but apparently they turned up en masse and arrested everyone. Don't know how many people they got caught with drugs or anything, I can't remember, I wasn't there. Shortly after the Van Dyke closed down, and after that it was actually demolished. If you go there now, where the Van Dyke once stood, there's now a small row of modern terraced houses. Sad. Still, life goes on. What else was happening in Plymouth at the time? There was Mr. B's Fun Factory down at Knott Street, which was a shop that sold all hippie gear. And Mr. B himself, his real name was Mike Brown, and he used to drive around in a hearse. And it was quite sad really, because he died, he didn't live very long. And he was a bit of a character, he was sadly missed. We had Alan Walters, otherwise known as Hippie Alan, who ran a clothes shop up in Greenbank. The shop was called Narnia, and he sold lots of clothes up there. We used to get lots of our clothes in London, but if you didn't go up there, you get them from Alan instead. Alan's still around. I believe he's working at the post office place in Pennington Quick at the moment. What else would we do? Yeah, Ronnie's Club on the Barbican. I worked at Ronnie's Club for several years as a doorman, and all the hippies used to go to Ronnie's Club. Ronnie's Club is still there, but it's now called the Key Club. I haven't been inside it to see how different it is inside, but I shouldn't imagine it looked very similar. Where did we all drink apart from that? Oh, we used to go to the Swan in North Corner, Devonport, where they put local bands on, and that was always a good place. And there used to be the Breakwater Inn down at Coxside. They used to put lots of local bands on as well. Sadly, both of those venues are now closed down. They are both now private housing. When I came back to Plymouth after a long sojourn, I went to these places hoping to see some bands, and I was really disappointed to find they weren't there anymore. Other pubs we used to hang out. We used to hang out at the Clifton in Clifton Street, and the Providence and the Wellington, which are both up in the same area. The Dolphin on the Barbican was always a favourite place of ours. It was full up with fishermen and hippies, and that place hasn't changed hardly at all since the early 60s when we used to go in there. So that was pretty much the scene in Plymouth at the time, in the late 60s and early 70s. I hope you enjoyed my little talk. I might find something else to talk about for another one. Bye.